Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second Best of Eyes Wide Open 2025. This is the reality TV edition. Again, if you're new here or you've been here a while, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. This episode is specifically related to the work that I do and so many others do on reality TV. We'll talk about the first qualitative study conducted by Dr. Christine Chapais in reality TV. We've got clips from Ben Walters, who was a cast member of Married at First Sight. We're going to talk to Dirty John survivor as well, Terra Newell. And we are going to talk and check in with, we're also going to talk about Reality Bites theater show that took place in London, which was a huge commentary on reality TV. And then we'll check in with attorney Jasmine Wigg on the Love is Blind lawsuit and some labor issues that are facing Love is Blind and reality TV. So again, if you're here for the first time or you're a veteran of the show, I'm glad you're here. Thank you and enjoy this Best of Eyes Wide Open reality TV edition for 2025. Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. You decided you were going to speak out about your contract. You have been very vocal, especially on TikTok and in some interviews about that. What was the tipping point for you that you were ready to finally speak and say, this is not right?
It was by fluke. I watched the first week of this year's Married at First Sight, and there was someone on the show that said I didn't get a correct match. Then I later went back through my contract and the application process, and I couldn't remember. I was like, damn. Yeah, this guy got stitched up because there is an opportunity where you clearly say what you want to find as an ideal partner. So my first video was about reviewing that. Sort of just, I thought people would be interested, and I thought, hang on, and then I mentioned it, this is information that production clearly knows. So they can stitch you up, and it's what you signed up for. So it's a risk. But then I said after that, because I was digging through my old paperwork, and I thought, well, I've got this contract, and I had a quick breeze over it again. And I thought, this thing's so fucked. It's so one-sided. Do you want me to review that? And then I got heaps of comments saying and DMs saying review it. I'm like, all right. So it's quite in depth, and no one wants to sit there and listen to someone talk for an hour about a contract. It's boring. So I found the juiciest parts and tried to summarize it the best I can. Well, what I did not expect is radio shows around Australia that are national picked up on it, talked about it, and then took the piss out of me, including and the awesome thing about that is it's not just gossipy stuff. It was genuine journalism going,
news,
this is fucking cooked. Now, I've already had legal letters from Channel 9 saying cease and desist, and I thought, I can handle that again if this happens. If I'm only leaking the contract, what can go wrong? Didn't happen. And then unexpectedly, this guy called Rob McKnight, he tapped in and roasted the shit out of me, saying, it's what you signed up for. And then I edited him out of context. I did what reality TV does to him, and I made him say words he never said. And then he got so pissed.
It was genius, by the way. It was
like, eat shit, son. But what I was doing, I got his attention. And then he did another segment about me, about taking me out of context, saying Ben's a master manipulator. I'm like, yep, I learnt from the best. How good's that? And he's a proper journalist. So I used reality TV tactics against a journo. And then he took the piss out of me again, roasting me. So it went back and forth to a point where we were slipping each other's DMs going, made another news article on Channel 7, fucking have that, Benny boy. Couldn't respect the guy's drive to fucking roast me. And he did it very well. And he also goes, mate, if you want to unpack this, here's my number. And then I explained exactly this. I explained, there's no offense. I respect what you're doing, and thanking him because you're bringing this attention to light. You sort of fell for the trap. I was like, what's this trap? What's this you're talking about? And then I spoke a bit what we're talking about, their production tactics, about sleep deprivation. Now, this guy's a journo. like 20 odd years in the industry, and he had no idea. And so that was shit.
And this is the people that don't know that if they
and they're in the
knew,
game.
their mind could be changed.
And I was like, fuck. Like, so, and that's what the news article had come out again. And he's going, had a great chat with Ben. Like, it was real shit. It was a real genuine chat. And I said, mate, I was being a dick and willing to look like a dick, which I have, in order for these issues to surface.
Yeah. How do you got to make them pop culture. Yeah, you got to make them pop culture.
Oh, yeah. So that's what I was doing. So people get drawn. Oh, Ben's a dick. What's he talking about? And that's what I'm also hopeful of, is people do question what they're shown. People do question. They got ChatGPT on their phone. Type it in, gives you the answer. Like there it is. There it is. Like, and then hopefully people are smart enough to figure this shit out, and then go, maybe there is some, crooked shit behind reality TV. Maybe that person was put in a situation to act and said, wait, oh, that's fascinating shit. So I think that is able to bring questions to it. It's not going to stop the juggernaut of reality TV, but I think it's going to put extra light on the behind the scenes and the puppeteers with the strings. And if that can lead to people stop trolling people online, if that can lead to change, you first got to shift people's opinion. And,
exactly.
I was just hated evil person. So the hardest thing for me is, like, it's going to be discredited. But if there's a superstar reality person that starts speaking like we are, and there has been, like, people more influential than me, and I've got nothing in comparison, I think that's where it can change. Yeah. Or, if a superstar in a reality show in Australia, people have, I think one person's committed suicide, I think, on a reality show. But, like, if it gets to a point, like, which I think it will.
I do too. That's one of the.
Get that far is more likely.
And we've both stated this before, but there have been several more than just the Love Island. Like there's several suicides that have come from people's really and when I was at my worst position, that thought was in my mind very prevalently. When you're at the point where, like, you think you've lost everything and there's no way out, and you can't function the way that you're used to functioning, and you feel like you're never, like, I couldn't shake this feeling of I'm never going to be the same person I was before this. And that person worked so hard to become the person that they were. And I was like, I can't, that was the feeling. I'm like, I can't be that person ever again. And it was the darkest few months of my life. Like, I isolated myself from people, which doesn't help. It makes it worse. And I kept thinking to myself, if I'm going through this, I'll handle it. But there's a lot of people that might not be able to handle it. And those are the people that I need to fight for.
Yeah.
And it's just
trying to,
I don't want it to happen.
The right message, right sport to them. It's bloody hard to do.
Yeah, it is. And I just can't believe that it's so hard to believe that we're going to be at the point where I think it's possible something horrible happens while filming, or horrible happens while the show's airing. And while the show's airing is when that person's at their peak popularity, right? Where the most eyes are on them. And I don't want us to get to that point. Like, I believe we're better than that as people.
You're right. I think it's like sort of perhaps any industry in the world. Like, 100 years ago, we used to have chimney sweepers. Stick a kid up a fucking chimney. Like, that was the norm. That was the baseline of, like, well, it's just how it is. And then we're like, well, that's not right.
We shouldn't have child labor.
Yeah, child labor. Like, there was a normality in society where, like, I know American history, slavery. That was the norm. And then people started to question it and go, well, that's fucking wrong. And then finally a shift. Like, it's just the world going through it.
Women not being able to vote or work.
Yeah. Like, these are unrelated political sort of things in society where you go, enough's enough. This is unfair. It's not right. People rise up. People make change. And we're thinking, oh, it's reality TV. But just like you said in sport, in rugby, for example, concussions, like head high tackles, people get driven in the ground, broken this, broken bones. The trainer would go out and they used to call it the magic sponge. It was just a bit of water, put splash in their face. They sort of shake them up for 10 minutes. They've just got out of concussion. Like, can you catch the ball? You know your name? Yep, we'll get back on the field. That was normal in the 80s. And then, yes, science has determined that that's fucking wrong. People like the blood sport, but it's now shifted to a safer space. So if it can be done for entertainment, like extreme sport, well, extreme mental battles is basically reality TV.
Well, and
You're
I
on
think
the brink of
we're,
fucking snapping each time.
yeah, you're exactly
And
right.
now we
And I think,
understand we got a lot more awareness about how mental health works these days and more comfortable, but greater understanding. And workplaces have got wellness days and mental health days because now we understand it better. But reality TV, it's not there.
we've got to catch it up. And
And that's
I'll
the
say,
extreme of mental health. That's the extreme of mental fucking fatigue.
yeah. And I think you were right when you were talking about the science of, we didn't have the science of this stuff, right? We didn't understand how the brain worked or how concussion. It wasn't that long ago. We had mild concussions, moderate concussions, severe concussions before we realized a concussion's a concussion. And it's by person, it's by concussion. They're all different. We can't have them labeled like that, right? And that's science evolving. And I think what we're seeing here, and I actually have it right here, this is one of the first studies of its kind. And it is called, it was written by Christine Chapais. Oh, God, I forgot how to say her last name. Chapais, I think. Sorry, Christine, if you're listening. It's called Reality Check, a qualitative study of the mental well-being among participants. First published study that was done with 15 cast members being interviewed about their mental health before, during, and after these shows. And there were 3 themes that I just want to share with you. I wasn't expecting to do this. But these are the 3 themes that that she determined from her research that's now published to be the results from being on a reality TV show. One was that there's unfulfilled motivations, expectations, and promises. And that one's obvious, right? Like you think you're going to get your 15 minutes of fame and it's going to go a certain way, and chances are it's not going to go the way you think. The second one was compromised authenticity and identity, which is you watch yourself on TV and all of a sudden you don't really know who you are anymore because it's different. And that's where I was talking myself a little bit about you got to separate yourself from the edit, right? Because what you're seeing up there is going to gaslight you in a way.
Yeah.
And then the third, which I think is the most prevalent, which is why I want to bring this up, is the cast members have challenging mental health and coping skills following the show. And it's because you can't prepare for what you're going through or the impact it's going to have on you. And so this being one of the first studies of its kind that's been published and peer reviewed and recognized by the Psychology of Popular Media, this is the kind of stuff I think that's going to really highlight and turn our conjecture and other people's conjecture about what it does to the mental health of us and cast members, and really start to put some science around it, some research around it, so that we can start treating it for what it really is in reality TV, where they don't have to abide by any rules or regulations or science or the support the mental health of cast members in a very real way.
Well,
so I think we're at the beginning of that.
I'm glad you brought that up. First time I heard that study, and
it just was published 2 weeks ago.
I resonated particularly the last 2. Watch myself on the show. I was like, fuck, that's not me. I had friends reach out and go, that I know you for years, mate, and that character wasn't you. And I was believing it was. So, fuck, that was hard to wrap my head around. And then secondly, how do you cope with that? How do you, fucking hell, you don't go to a local store and pick up the book on it. It doesn't exist. So it's still evolving to and I've probably the producers are unaware of this or don't give a fuck. You'll figure it out. Go see a doctor. You'll be fine. Where it's not that simple. So it's super hard to manage. And why would they give a fuck? They're making tens of millions of dollars. So, everyone's got their own problems as well. So it becomes our problem. And it's so good that there are studies out there. Like we're talking right now, these are just opinions based on
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
But when you go to study with some data, well, shit, this becomes facts. We
Exactly.
know it's
And we need
facts.
more of these. It's
Yeah,
the first one that I've seen.
what I'd love to do, or hope for, is try to. Spoke to a few people about this in media. Try to put together like a detailed, it would have to be well funded documentary. Trying to explain this is so hard. Like it would go for at least an hour, and you have to get some seriously talented storytellers. It's a documentary. I like the movie Concussion. Like you need a Will Smith to fucking turn up and make a movie and going fuck, like, and actually people make their eyes wide open. Like, and it's credit to you for making this podcast because I don't have millions of dollars to make a big Hollywood blockbuster to really open up people's minds and shift cultural change. But I think that's what's required to that point.
One of the things that I've also learned the last year, 2 years I've been working with UCAN and kind of really trying to change this industry is it's so much about the community, more so than it is about what's on that screen. And what I mean by that is you've got your base level content, right, that you watch on Netflix or Channel 9 or whatever that is. Then you've got your community, right? The people that watch it and the people that form opinions on it, the people that talk about it on Reddit, the people that listen to a podcast or Rob Nick Knight about it. And they're being shaped in the way they think by the people they listen to, the people they trust, just like with the news, right? And then they go and they talk to their friends about it and they're back on Reddit. And then there's commentators that are critiquing the opinions and the commentary of the top tier podcasts. And they're doing commentary on those people who are doing commentary on the base content, all the while everyone's talking about it on Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, and everybody's consuming content. And it creates this like community of people around these shows. But part of that community is what are the movies about the topic? What are the papers about the topic? What are the podcasts about the topic? And all of these things feed into the narratives and feed into how people view these shows, these people, these storylines, these couples, whatever that is. And I think part of what needs to happen to move this community along is exactly what you're saying. We need different types of content covering it, journalistic content exposing it, documentaries, social commentary in terms of like maybe satire, stuff like that, or like a concussion type of movie where you're kind of bringing people along and bringing them together in a way that maybe they wouldn't ever see it if that type of community wasn't considered. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like this community of people.
Yeah.
And you've got to bring them together through all the different outlets or channels that they're getting their information from.
That I think could be a few different ways to make some giant leaps forward. So yeah, someone like myself speaking out with a very tiny platform, and also getting an unfavorable edit on the show. People think, fuck him, like it's what he deserves anyway. So it's like politicians, like if they're an unliked person, which most are, they can't really drive change. And when there's backlash, they're like, too bad, it's what it's what you deserve. But if you get a super liked individual, maybe from reality TV, who had the best favorable edit ever, and they speak out about it, possibly generate change. But why would they? Because he's part of the secret sauce. What I've found through my experience is the people who had great edits got looked after.
Yeah.
That's the double standard.
Because they can keep making money off of them. They can both make money off of each other. I've seen that. There's so many people. I've talked to many people, and mostly it's the kind of like the forgotten person, right? The person like you or me that was on a season and then didn't continue a career in reality TV or influencing or whatever that is. But those people that still go to the premieres on the red carpets, that still go to or have a podcast talking about it and gossiping about it, or continue to promote other shows on the network or whatever that is, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, even if they're like, yeah, it's kind of fucked up how they treat us, what they do to us. But they can't.
There's only one person that I know of who's done extremely well, is Joshua Fox, who does this Maths Funny. Yeah, I think
I've seen.
yeah. He's done like a 3-part sort of mini journalist documentary way, but it's audio, so it's super low budget. But the stories and the morals and the lessons that he unpacks, because he takes a piss out of maths in a very clever way, but he's made some. He's pulled back the curtain by being I wouldn't say a journalist. He's like a paparazzi sort of guy. He's fucking smart.
Yeah.
Makes great points. Like he's witnessed it or studied the show. He knows more show about me, despite me being on it. But I think that's a great stepping stone. And even his influence, it's very small. But if something like that is heightened into a well-produced documentary, like a proper documentary, then yeah, maybe then.
Yeah.
Hard to sell.
Agree. Well, that's the funny thing, because I have talked to several different documentary filmmakers, and each time they can't get anyone to pick it up. And I tell them, like, while we're talking about it, while we're planning, while we're building a pitch, and I say, I'm like, here's the problem: is you're trying to disrupt an industry that's very profitable, and every network and every streaming service is benefiting from it. So it's going to take the ultra hyper aware or hyper meta network or streaming service to do that, to take something like that and distribute it. And so each time I say that, and I think people realize that until the tides are actually turning on them, they're never going to pick something up like that, and you're never going to get it funded or distributed. And I think that's going to be the big challenge with something like a documentary like that.
Can be done. It can be done. I don't know how, I don't know who, but I
agree. I haven't figured out how.
It's an incredible. I think it's sitting on there's a golden nugget if it's done the right way.
I agree.
It's people can ask a lot of questions. Like, everyone's familiar or at least heard of reality TV. So if you have it, it's done in a similar way. It's like, hey, here's a magic show. But then you watch the show and, like, here's how the magic tricks are done. People are like, oh, fuck, that's interesting. So
yeah, I want to see that.
I think that's how it can be created. Especially when you get studies, it's like this is how it's a trick. It's a fucking trick. It's a complicated one and hard to absorb, but I don't know how else to make the change. I'm open to ideas. Like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I'll just keep.
Me neither. But it's fun to speculate and talk about it a little bit. I will say that. Stephen Richardson is recently filed, or at least as the front, a new class action lawsuit against Love is Blind and Kinetic and Delirium, the content producers. Can you break down what this lawsuit is, what a class action lawsuit is, and then what this lawsuit looks like?
Yeah, so Stephen, who is on season 7, on September 18th, filed a class action lawsuit in California. A class action is when you have a class of similar situated individuals who can make the same claim as you. So in this case, he is bringing the action on behalf of season 6. Yep, season 6 through to date. And it's individuals. And then he also opened the door for other reality show contestants that would meet similar claims against these production companies, but primarily the Love is Blind cast members who would join. And he's the lead plaintiff. And his claims are similar as we've seen before in these actions involving Love is Blind and production. they are wage an hour. So in his complaint, he goes on to talk about the days that he worked and how he worked for, I'm only to get into whether this is
Yeah.
work. There were 20-hour days. And so 20 hours a day, I guess 7 days a week. Um, and you're getting a $1,000 a week stipend. So that's basically against a lot of labor laws. First of all, you can't even work that many hour days. But additionally, there are minimum wage requirements. The contract has to be interpreted in California law. So California's got a pretty high minimum wage. It's around 16.90. I checked last night, an
Mm.
hour. And then that's
I actually
minimum
thought it
wage.
was higher. I thought it was 20, but
Yeah,
that's it
maybe in
should be.
Los
Come on,
Angeles it's
California.
higher. I know, right? It's not very California-like. Um, but that just covers those first 8 hours of work. And then after that, you're entitled to time and a half of your regular hourly rate. So 1,000 a week would be a gross underpayment. So just that's the first part. So, and then he goes on to talk about the conditions of the workplace, which is a little bit novel. The prior lawsuits didn't go in as far as um, beyond wage an hour, whereas he's saying that this was just not a healthy work environment and not up to code because they were responsible for providing food and water and access to those things because you're on set living, you're basically in a living environment. But according to the complaint, he says he was like plied with alcohol, and then cast members are given very limited access to things like food and water. They're also stripped of their IDs and their phones, so they're not able to access the outside world, which is part of the experiment. But it gets hairy when you're you're considering yourself an employee, and then this is your job, and your job is taking away your phone and controlling when you can eat, when you can take breaks, when you can get fresh air, and giving you underpayments, gross
So
underpayments.
this is just brand new information to me. I'm wondering why it took so many seasons, because 9 just started, for someone to come out and claim this stuff and do something about it. It's crazy. It's not like this was happening in season 1 and 2. Being sarcastic. Sometimes it doesn't come across. But
No, got you. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
pattern.
yeah. What I find interesting is there's, so what are we at now? 5 lawsuits, I think, right? We've got the original class action. We've got,
Yeah, we have Hartwell,
we have the Hartwell one.
Dang,
Dang. We
Posh,
have Poche, which is like a counter. Poche is the countersuing. Now we've got this one, and then we've got the
the
NLRB.
NLRB.
Okay, yeah, 5 lawsuits on one show. Like that seems crazy to me. And I kind of want to break down the differences in these suits a little bit too. But with this one, what I found interesting, this new one, is that it's making the labor claims, which I think is the baseline for Hartwell's original lawsuit. But it is interesting that he's adding kind of like the work environment stuff. Is there any? Because that's what's sexy. Let's just start there. I try so hard to make the NLRB stuff culturally relevant, but it's such a dense, labor law is dense, and it's super important and a foundation of our country and where we are right now. But like, it's super dense. The
Mhm.
lack of food, all of the alcohol, the long hours of being filmed constantly, all that stuff. That's like a little more sexy for culture, I think, for pop culture. Does that have any legal ramifications in this class action, from your opinion? Or do you think that it's really, really more about those labor hours?
Play in because it goes to the workplace safety and complying with just basic accommodations that should be provided in a workplace. And in this case, if this workplace is involves living there and having all meals provided, then they are required. There are certain amounts of breaks in a workday in addition to providing a minimum wage. You also have to provide at least like a 30-minute work break, and it has to come after a certain amount of hours worked. So let's say like 5 hours worked. So in this case, if you're under complete control over those who employ you, and you don't get a say in when you get to break for food and when you can drink water. That also violates the law. And this case, as you said, there have been several before. I think that it's building on the momentum of all the cases that came before it. And for example, when he talks about being stripped of his phone and the credit cards, maybe that is more sensational than it goes to, let's say, wage and hour or labor law. But it ties in a little bit of what Renee Pochet's lawsuit was about, in that she felt like the contract was overly restrictive. So it brings in elements from prior, and of course, the wage and hour distinctions and labor law issues are all things we saw previously in the Hartwell original class action and then in the NLRB. I think the main thing here is that we have a question of, are reality TV cast members workers, employees, or something else? The production would like to call them independent contractors. They would like to say that these are contestants who receive a stipend. Now, if it looks like a job and it acts like a job, the law very often is going to call it a job, whether or not your contract says very explicitly, this is not a job. The Love is Blind contract tells you, you are not an employee, you are an independent contractor. However, there are things that are in part of the experience that do sound like work, and they do sound like you should be provided certain protections because you are working. And that's going to be the ultimate question here. Is it a job or is it not a job?
I think that is a perfect place for me to add this caveat. So I was the first person to file an NLRB charge, and spent several hours. What do they call that? It wasn't a testifying. They were my disposition or something like that.
Deposition?
Deposition. Yeah. See, this is how stupid I am when I'm like, I don't know any of this
You're
stuff,
not.
even though I'm like going through it.
Who would know this word if you didn't practice?
Right. Good point. So I went through this whole thing, and my whole point with that, taking your wallet, taking your phone, what that does for the labor claim is it takes away your autonomy. And autonomy of a contractor, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of an independent contractor is you have the ability to work when you want and where you want. And that's kind of the idea. Whereas an employee, when you can't leave on your own accord because you don't have ID. And by the way, I didn't have ID when I was in a foreign country, and not just in the resort we were in for filming, but we were in a random like Hampton Inn in Cancun for 3 days in a parking
no
lot.
ID.
No ID. That like no passport, no money, no credit cards. Like just to me, that was when I look back and I was like, that was really dangerous. And so that to me, the position I take, and when I testify in my NLRB hearing, which is coming up early next year, that's the point I want to make, is like the lack of autonomy makes you an employee because you literally cannot leave. And the contract also, at least my contract, I've heard it's changed. I haven't seen it change. I don't know if you've seen any newer contract. There's like a $50,000 in damages fee if you leave. And I believe that's also part of Stephen's case as well. But that lack of autonomy, like in your point of view, does that lean more towards like a proof point that you're legally an employee in your view?
Yes, that is a great point. That is actually part of a test that California and a lot of other states apply to determine whether work is considered regular employment or independent contractor. So that's a critical piece, is whether you have the autonomy. Usually autonomy is thought of in sense of autonomy to control the work that you do. So for example, if you outsource a graphic designer on an independent contractor basis, you might give them a project and they're really going to do it. Let's say they have a deadline, but they're going to take care of that when they do and then send it back, even if it's within the deadline. Versus an employee, you tell them, be here at 9, stay until 5, do this work within these hours. That's the difference between autonomy or not. Similarly, when you're on the show, besides for giving up your ID, you also have to remain where they tell you, for how long they tell you, and you can't really choose to come and go as you please. And part of that is by taking away, literally taking away all the things that will allow you to do so. But you are pretty much under their control and you don't have the autonomy. Another thing that they look for is whether you're doing the core business of what the work is. So here they're producing a show. Cast members are participating in the show. It's the core business versus, for example, a let's say an office hires an outside electrician or plumber. That plumber, as an independent contractor, is doing his plumbing work or electricity work. They're not doing the core business of what your, let's say, accounting business is doing. That's a key distinction. In this case, you can't really separate what the cast is doing, participating in this love show, from the core purpose of the business, which is producing this love show.
The NLRB, so I filed an NLRB charge, National Labor Relations Board. There were several claims based on the contract, based on my working experience. I think you followed it, so you know. But my hope that the National Labor Relations Board was going to charge Kinetic Content and Delirium Content, which is, again, the production companies, and say that Love is Blind cast members, due to the contract, due to the amount of work, the labor elements of it, the working conditions, the time we spent working, the lack of autonomy, the long hold they have over us, all of these things go into the charge. And then in December of last year, the NLRB made the claim that we were misclassified as contractors by law, and that by law we should be considered employees. This case is my way of building lasting change. And also, for those of you who wonder, my closure to all of the things that I've been through the last few years, and some of the experiences that the people I care about from this experience have gone through as well. So if you could explain the labor law element in layman's terms, and the NLRB charge, and what this could mean for Love is Blind and all of reality TV moving forward, should a court of law rule that this is factual and that we should be designated as employees?
Yeah, so the NLRB is stating that they believe there's been a misclassification. In other words, even though the contract will tell the cast members that they're not employees, the way that the show runs looks like employment, and therefore the rules of labor, the labor laws and the rules of employment must apply to these cast members. It's really important because it gives a lot of credence and validity to these lawsuits and to the claims that you made. And this NLRB action is not for a payment. You're not going to get a payout, but what you are going to get is change, which is probably the most important thing that you've been looking for. Like, as far as I've gotten to know you, that's been the most important thing for you, has been to see these reality stars' rights be protected and just be treated properly as employees. And I think that the NLRB action has a lot of potential. If the labor board is looking at this contract and looking at the show and saying, these are misclassified employees, that really tells you something. You can't, these are the experts in labor law, and they're saying that. So it gives a lot of salience to these claims. I think there's a good chance that change will be made because there's pressure coming from all sides. We see, all these lawsuits have been built up, and I don't think the show is going anywhere. Like you said, it's super popular, but I think that they're going to have to make some changes if they want to continue the show by treating the cast members as employees. And I think they have the means to do so. I don't think it's a matter of being unable to do so. I think they were trying to get away with something, and everybody's pushing back, which is when you see change happen.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And you're right. Like, I want change. I've never been I like money. Everybody likes money. I've never been motivated by money. I just want to live my life and take a vacation every now and then and go out for a steak. So to me,
Amen.
it's like, yeah. It's like, I look at this and I'm like, what can cause change. And then it clicked to me when I had the W-2, actually, that I was like, why would they give me a W-2 and say I'm a contractor? And I know a little bit, like I grew up working class. I know a little bit about labor. And so that was kind of when the wheels started turning to do this. And I think now, as I've shared earlier, like I've actually spoken with people at the NLRB extensively about this experience. It is going to go to, is this called, it's not trial, right? You're right. You're right. And so what I think is so interesting right now is there's been a groundswell, right? And like you said, it's the movement when change happens. For me, like we're in the midst right now where precedence is being set. The lawsuits are setting a legal precedence. And to me, it's like you're fighting 5 lawsuits, over the course of 2.5 years. That's a drain. But the business model of reality TV for the last however many years, in its current form, it's been at least 15, 16, 17 years. And you look at it and the whole business model is built on cheap labor, cheap production, not paying union SAG-AFTRA actors and actresses and performers. In some cases, I've even heard some of these shows try to use non-union crews when they're in specific cities where it seems more applicable. So it's all about driving a whole bunch of revenue and keeping costs low. And if all of a sudden you have to pay these people that are coming on these shows, and then you have to pay them fair labor wages, or if they unionize, which the contract forbids you to do, which I want to touch that on 1 second on that too. It's really at the point where I feel like they would take this all the way to the Supreme Court, because you're disrupting not just your business model, but entire industry's business model. And I think like all this spotlight on Love is Blind and even like Real Housewives and stuff like that, it is shaking the foundation of this business model. And I think that there's going to be a huge, huge, huge push as we get closer and closer and closer to this designation possibly becoming reality to
I was just
suppress
thinking
that.
about Vanderpump Rules, because when they began on the show, they were like broke, really young people who weren't making very much money, but they also weren't demanding a lot. But then as the show grew, they became huge celebrities. They started demanding more money, and the show had to pony up because the show was reliant on these cast members who were making so much money. But also as the cast members became fairly wealthy, there was a lot less they would take from the show, and they started asserting, demands of their own, whether in terms of who they're filming with and when they're filming. So it's like a reciprocal situation. So maybe when Netflix first produced Love is Blind season 1, they didn't know if this show was going to be anything. Like, who knows if anyone's
And their
interested.
working conditions were way worse than ours.
Oh, I can
They
imagine.
were sleeping in trailers at the beginning, like outside the studio in a trailer
God.
with cockroaches.
See, there's
But
so much none of us even know about what goes on behind the scenes still. But now they know full well that this show is a huge moneymaker. So it's in their best interest to treat their employees, the cast members, accordingly. Otherwise,
I
they're going to continue to be hit by these lawsuits, because even just this settlement by Hartwell, the 1.4 million, that has communicated that they're willing to pay, and that there are good salient claims to make against them. So it's not going to stop coming unless things change.
other thing I wanted to ask you. So we talked about like the unfulfilled motivations, expectations, promises was the first theme. I want to get to the other two, but I wanted to ask you another question about that. What do you think can be done, or what do you, maybe not can be done industry wide, but if you have that too, but like, what do you think a person who's going into a reality TV show now, or is considering it or going through it, what do you think they can do to better align their expectations with the reality of reality TV?
I think that's a great question, because I think there are some people that no matter how much you tell them, there are some people that just, they won't believe you until they experience it for themselves.
So true.
You know what I mean? They think,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one, that I am more powerful than this. This is something that I'm going to be able to do, even though nobody else was able to do it, or most people aren't able to do it.
That's how I feel about the people that say you signed up for this. It's because I think they could have done it better or
Yes.
different or wouldn't be impacted by it.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So I think for other people who maybe are don't have that perspective, just really paying attention, listening to the actual voices of people who have experienced, being on a reality TV show, and hearing those personal perspectives. And that's part of why I wanted to do a qualitative study rather than a quantitative study, because I wanted to amplify actual voices of people who have been on reality TV and hear directly from their perspective. So, the beauty of a qualitative study is, no, it's not exactly generalizable because there's not enough number, but you're getting to hear the deep thoughts of people who you don't know who's talking. So they might be a little bit more open, and you get to really have an understanding of their perspective. So I hope people will listen to that. I think also, once you've heard those perspectives and you get an education on these practices, then go back and rewatch some of your shows that you like and see it. One of the things that I know about, because I've been, I've filmed things before, is the idea of continuity. So when you're watching a scene, if someone is eating food and then all of a sudden their food has disappeared, then there was a jump in that scene. There was a cut, right? That's the whole reason on Love is Blind, why they have those gold chalices, is because they don't want you to see that the liquid in the glass has gone down or up, and that way they can cut things easier. I'm assuming, allegedly. I'm not really
that's
sure.
Correct. Yeah.
But
I can say, I can't say it's 100% correct, but I can say that it's correct
right.
from
It's
my
one
perspective.
of maybe one of the reasons. Yeah.
And now I do think it's a branding exercise. Those things are so
Totally.
popular. Like I have to hide them. And I have some, and I hide them in my house because otherwise people would see them, go crazy, and then it becomes
Right.
a topic of discussion. And then I'm sitting here with my friends talking about the show again, and it's like,
yeah, yep, right. So just little things like that. Once you become educated on what to look out for, I tend to view things from the perspective of, how would I feel if that were me? So if I said that thing on screen, would I regret that afterwards? Right. And I guess I'm thinking of, when someone is very obviously intoxicated and they're saying something that, people are making fun of afterwards, or it feels embarrassing even when you're just watching it. Would I want someone filming me intoxicated and putting that on national television for everybody to see? How would that make me feel afterwards, when I am coherent and I am thinking and making decisions from my logical mind? You know what I mean? Just from a consent perspective, how can you get someone's consent to be on TV if you're filming them while they're intoxicated? Right. And there's many
and
shows
to
that
do
this.
things. Yeah. It's to do things. I actually wanted to ask you, what, when I went on, God, what, oh, I went on a podcast that covers true crime and cults. What was it called? That's so effed up, I think it's called. I'm so sorry to Ashley
You're
for
like,
screwing
that's
that
so
up.
effed up that I can't remember.
No.
No,
I
it's
think that's
called...
what it's called. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Ashley, who's the hostess. But one of the things that we chatted about was like informed consent.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Yes.
I can make informed consent, but once I have that drink or that second drink, or I haven't eaten, or whatever that might be, or it's 12 hours into filming, like, am I still able to give that consent? I think there's real questions about that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with
And,
you. I mean, mental health professionals have to give, request informed consent on a regular basis, even from
yeah.
the perspective of competency, and to make sure that someone fully understands what they're getting into. You have to really make sure that they understand, and that maybe in different scenarios that consent will apply there as well, because it might change. You might need to check back in, and maybe that's a practice that needs to be adopted too, where, all right, you agreed to this, now let's do a check-in and make sure you still agree to this. How do you feel?
Yeah. And, I want to have one of my pillars is that I want to have independent mental health professionals for each cast member,
Yes.
who is part of their role there would be to have the ability to work with their person and determine if they're able to give consent to be filmed. So like I think back to my experience in Mexico when Danielle had a panic attack and there was no mental health professional there to help her. Like she should not have been filming after that. And I think, and I compare it often to like the NFL's concussion protocol that now has an independent neurologist conducting concussion tests on the sideline, and outside of the team has the ability to say this person cannot play. They are
Right.
concussed. And when it was a team doctor, it would be like, they're fine. Send them back in. So I think of it kind of like that, because if we have, someone there who has to get consent on a regular basis, understands consent, they can make sure that the person's in a place mentally where they can give consent.
Right. And so something that very interesting that happened organically with my study was that it just so happened that half of the people I spoke to filmed in the US, and the other half, basically around half, filmed in the UK, even though they were from the US. And so in the UK, they have different standards of mental health evaluations and just support throughout the process. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but this is really what drove me to want to research this as well. When I started doing my research, I saw that 21 people had died by suicide within the span of 10 years in the US. And yet there really has been no progress in mental health support. Whereas in the UK, 2 people died by suicide, and almost immediately they changed the policies to protect people's mental well-being. And so in the
there's
UK,
still a lot of work to do there in the UK
yes,
too, but
absolutely.
it's they have something.
They have something. Yes, it is better than the US. It still has some work to do for sure. But they have a regulatory body called Ofcom. It's kind of like the FCC here, but not exactly. Ofcom also cares about the people that are on the reality TV show, whereas the FCC, they're more interested in consumers. So they don't have any protections for the people actually on the show. And for viewers who may not know, if you're a professional actor or actress or whatever, you do have some protections because you have a union. You have SAG-AFTRA, exactly. They can protect you. Reality TV, they don't have a union. So not only do they not have the protections from the FCC, but then they also don't have a labor union protecting them either. Whereas in the UK, they at least have some rules within Ofcom.
Exactly. And I'd like to add yet. We don't have a union yet.
Right.
We're going to change that.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So another trend that you found was that, what was it? People had... oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Hold on, let me check.
That's okay. I can say it. I have it up too.
It was about authenticity.
Yes.
I just want to get the language right. There you go.
Yep. Compromised authenticity and identity. So that's just leaning more into the specifics of the editing process and what that might look like. There's even some research that names it, and they call it Frankenbiting, where they create a whole storyline. And to compare the US and the UK does have contractual obligations to not defame people or to change the storyline in a reality TV show. They do have to still stick to the storyline. That doesn't mean that they don't try to direct storylines so that they do happen, and they do try to manufacture it in a way, but they do so more in the US after it's already been filmed. And so
in the US too, at least in my experience and what I've seen, there's actually story producers. So there's like a producer that's kind of working behind the scenes outside of the person who's directing the scenes. And that person's keeping track of the story and making sure that they hit the story points they want to hit on.
Right. And it's to the point where even producers, in some people that I spoke to, said that they would literally text someone within what's being recorded to say this or do this. So the person looks like they might just be looking at their phone, and really they're being told by someone to do something else for the camera. Or they're being, you know, directed in another way where maybe they did say something, but then the producer is saying, can you say that again, but can you say it this way? So it's almost like line readings as well. That happens too.
That is true. And even stuff about like tense. So it's like, oh, say it like it's present tense. It's like, this happened 6 weeks ago. I don't even remember it. And it's like,
Right.
well, this happened. Say this. That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that then the person winds up feeling like this is a misrepresentation of who I am. And the stories that are typically told, they might fit into a certain theme. Like you said earlier, maybe someone's story is that they're the villain or that they're the princess, or it could be, you know, even racially biased, like that's the angry Black woman, you know. So just leaning into like these stereotypes and putting people into boxes and pigeonholing them into characters that really don't represent themselves. And that's going to disrupt that narrative identity, the story that they've told themselves. And that makes them struggle with their own self-perception and their authenticity. And then if people are scrutinizing them, they feel like they need to, you know, fight back and say, that's not me. What are you talking about? So you constantly feel like you're defensive.
What do you think are the long-term effects of that, or people feeling like they don't really have control of their identity?
I imagine, and I can't say for sure, that's actually one of the things I think should be researched
Long-term
after this
effects,
is
yes.
the long-term effects. But, you know, shame, I suspect is a big theme. I think as human beings, shame can really take a front seat for a lot of people and can be the culprit of a lot of the things that we deal with. And so if people are constantly saying you're not good enough and you're a terrible person, whether you know that to be true or not, that's going to take a toll on you. Um, I imagine that you're going to always have to feel like you're sticking up for yourself and always have to fight for people to know who you are. And at some point, it might even impact your own knowledge of yourself and your own understanding of yourself. You may not know your own identity after a while. There's theories, and it's not related to reality TV, but for example, there's a personality disorder called borderline personality disorder. And one of the main or central ideas of borderline personality disorder is that it's people having difficulty with a sense of self. And so that might impact them being able to stand strong in their convictions and knowing what they want, you know. And I'm not just talking about people with borderline personality disorder, but in general, if you don't have a confident understanding of yourself, you might become a people pleaser. You might become codependent, where you're trying to find meaning of who you are through other people and the stories that they tell you of who you are.
Yeah. I also think, and I don't know if I don't think that this came up in the paper or in your research, but maybe it did in a different way or with one person and it wasn't a trend. But did you? I've noticed some people can or have sort of become the character that they were on the TV and almost embraced it to the point where like they don't really have the sense of former self. They only have become like the character that they were on the show, or that almost like the show made them become. Like, did you see any of that in your interviews and research? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Just embracing like, okay, fine. If that's who you think I am, then that's who I'm going to be. Or like, you know, that phrase, I'm in my villain era. You know, if you think I'm a villain, then I'll be a villain. I give up at this point, because if you're never going to believe me for who I am, then I'm just going to play into it. And you know, some of the people that I spoke to that had that perspective was like the one that I mentioned before, where it's like, okay, well, I was playing a character. You know, this is the character I portrayed, and that's not really me. I'll keep on playing that character just for you if it makes you happy.
Well, and it also can become, and I'm speculating, there's certain people I'm thinking about that I'm speculating on across several different shows and even networks, but like it almost becomes a point. I've talked to Danielle Gates from 90 Day Fiance about this, where it's almost like if you become the character, you can get on more shows,
Mm-hmm.
you can make more money. And
Right.
then it becomes the point where it's like, it becomes your way of life. And the only way you can make money is to go on more shows and become more of a caricature of this character.
Right.
Or you see people who maybe have been portrayed as like the party person or the one who's always drinking. And then before you know it, like you always got to be a little tipsy. And then all of a sudden you maybe develop a drinking problem. And that, you know, this isn't anyone specific I'm thinking of, but like,
Yeah.
that's an example. And it can be very dangerous to like become the character to the point where it becomes your way of life and the way you make money and your career. And then it just consumes you.
Right. And I think that speaks to narrative identity theory too, because although you've embraced this character and now you are finding success based on this other version of you, if that's incongruent to the actual person that you are, I imagine that would also cause some negative outcomes, because that's a lot to upkeep, for people to constantly think that this is who you are and really you're this entirely different person. But I think that would also be great as part of sort of the longer term
We definitely
study.
need long-term studies.
Yeah.
We definitely. I love satire. I love social commentary. I love watching a movie, watching a show, watching a play with undertones. And what I don't like, and this is, I always think of, I don't like stuff that beats you over the head with a hammer. And I'm going to use this example. It's a very controversial example when I share this, but the movie Crash. If you've ever seen the movie Crash from like 2003, at the time I was like the only person in the world that hated that movie. And I was like, this movie, like there's one part of that movie that like made me feel something. And it was, and I still think about it. I don't really even remember the movie that much, but like there was a moment when Sandra Bullock was saying to her friend that she just feels so alone. And her friend was like, yeah. And then just went on talking about herself. And I was like, that moment right there was so much more interesting than them beating me over a head about racism for 2 hours. And so what I liked about Reality Bites is it leaves a lot for you to sort of see how you feel with it. And I think I shared this with you, to the listeners. I talked to some of the cast and the production last week already? I don't even remember. It was very recently. Yeah. And one of the things that I liked about this, and I encourage them to lean into in their performances, is like, let it sit with people, because reality TV is so fast paced. Most movies and shows are so fast paced, and they're designed to kind of like keep moving and keep you overstimulated and not give you a chance to like sit in it and think too much about it. And I like movies and shows that put you in a position to like stop and think and reflect. And I think that this does that very well. So I actually want each of you to answer this question kind of, but give an elevator pitch to you about what Reality Bites, the production, is about, and then share what is it about this that resonates. I think, Laura, you'll have a different answer, which I want to put both. What about the show resonates with you and makes you want to participate in the production from your perspective?
Laura, do you want to go first?
Yeah, Laura, you can go first.
Should I go? Well, first, I just want to say I love what you said, Nick, because I think at Gooper Dust Productions, what we're all about is making theater that makes you think without telling you what to think. And that's what I love about Jamie's characters, because they're very complicated and they're endearing and infuriating in equal measure. And Reality Bites is about 4 strangers and one extreme dating show. It's about what happens when you get naked on TV, literally, but also metaphorically. It's really, and it's about the fallout for not just the contestants, but the people around them, but also the rest of us who might be looking at this and consuming. And to me, this is really a show that's close to my heart, because I think it goes beyond just talking about reality TV. It's really about the many ways in which we consume other people, or how we offer ourselves up for consumption, whether that be via social media or in our other dynamics in terms of playing characters or versions of ourselves to try to fit into something. And it is sort of really about how our desire to be seen, which is so human, then paradoxically renders us invisible.
Very true. One of the characters, and again, this is kind of what I liked about this too, is it isn't, there's a cat. What's the cast? There's 5, right? 5.
There's a cast of 4.
Oh, it's 4. Okay. So I haven't seen it, everyone. I've read it though. So I was just having a hard time remembering. But what I like about it is there's the character who I think his name was Joshua, who's actually just watching his ex-girlfriend on the show. And I think a lot of times, and it isn't, it's reality TV, it's social media, it's all the content, the stuff you're saying, where your perception of people becomes your reality of that person, right? And that may not accurately represent that person that you know or don't know. And in the case of Joshua's perspective of watching his ex-girlfriend on there and the pain and hurt that caused him, it almost feels like he's being kind of like history's being rewritten almost in front of him. And I think that's a lot of the times what happens here is you almost feel like you're getting gaslit when you're watching people or social media or reality TV or documentaries that conflict with like your real life experience. And that's what I think is so interesting specifically about that character. But that whole scene and that element of the play kind of ties in with what you were saying, that we just get so wrapped up in these like ideas and concepts and narratives and things that are presented to us, and they may not always even resemble reality whatsoever. And so, Andy, I'll recap, what attracted you to this show and like, what does it mean to you as a director that you're trying to convey?
Yeah, globally, I think it's about trust and faith and a desire to be seen. And through that desire to be seen, the faith that we can put in constructs or systems that offer an opportunity for fame, if you want to put it in that, in that term, and then the manipulation that you leave yourself vulnerable to, and how much you're willing to give of yourself. Like you mentioned, Nick, about Laura sent me the recording of a conversation that you had with some of the team last week, and one of the things that really struck me, that I was really struck a chord with me, was you said you got the sort of you've got the cast members who are there legitimately looking for love. This is specifically about your experience, but obviously Reality Bites is slightly different. But the cast members that are legitimately that are there looking for fame, and how the different approach from how those people were recruited, for want of a better word, from the casting department. I found that absolutely fascinating, and that's not something I would have ever thought about. Which is kind of crazy. So you've got and we have in the play. What this is quite a basic thing to say, but I think a less crafted version of this play would be 4 characters that have been on the show and their different experiences. But what makes it super interesting is only one of the characters has appeared on it, and the other 3 are affected by it in some way. And I think that's one of the initial things that really drew me in, was that, let's say there's a piece about, about a soldier going to war, for example. And, obviously it's interesting to see the soldier's journey, but how does that affect the family? And how does that affect their loved ones? And I think that's often where the kind of richness comes from. And this does that. This does that brilliantly.
I could not agree more. And that to me was like I mentioned, kind of like the turning point for me because I didn't know that until I read it. And I think I was like reading it and I was like, wait a minute, like I gotta start over and read this from a different perspective, because it wasn't what I was expecting.
I would never get it unless like it was one of those situations, but that's my personal journey and no one else should have to make the choice of, and also like think about the kids, like if you have a baby, if it is unwanted, you didn't ever want it, like how do you feel the kid's going to feel growing up? I don't know. I just like am able to put myself in those situations and like politics otherwise because I want everyone to come and have like a safe place and not think like, oh, but I deal with domestic violence. That's much different than
Yeah.
reality TV.
Well, yeah, true. But also when you're making like a commentary on Jared Leto or something,
Yeah.
or whomever that might be, there's going to be people that idolize Jared Leto for one reason or another, appreciate him one reason or another, and that's going to contradict your post, and then they're going to get mad at you and then say, make their choice to unfollow you or whatever. But
Yes.
I don't think the actions of other people should make you question what you felt like was the right thing for you to do. That being said,
That's true.
we all post shit that we have to unpost because we're like, I missed this here, right? Like, how many times do you hear, and so since deleted the tweet? It's like, didn't Elon Musk just delete a tweet? He deleted the tweet saying that Donald Trump is on Epstein's list. Like, out there, man, we all have screenshots. You can delete it all you want. But anyway, you know what I mean? It's like,
I love that little battle with like, I've seen these tweets pop up, like being like, oh, just them digging at each other. And I was just
I was like, I needed this. I remember I was like, I needed this. It's so silly. And somehow Trump came out the bigger person, which I think is even more hilarious because he's the most petty man maybe in the history of the world. But it was so funny and ridiculous.
I'm from Orange County, California, so I can't make comments on that. But I will just say I can never vote for anyone that has sexual charges against them or allegations.
Which is, I think, totally fair.
Yeah.
And that's like that's your prerogative. And you can say that confidently. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell people what you're trying to, in your words, what you're trying to accomplish with the work you're doing. You help people through coaching. You help people through, you have retreats. You have content that's available on your website. Tell people all about that and what you're trying to accomplish and what your work is looking to change.
Thank you. So I saw so many podcasts, so many true crime podcasts. It's so saturated. There is so many huge true crime podcasts that I listen to, and even that I'm friends with those people. And I don't think what they're doing is 100% ethical. They take stories, they rip them from the headlines, and then they're living large in a nice house and from the stories from the podcast. And so I really wanted to create this awareness, and I've been talking about it on and off on articles, different podcasters, different podcasts about the ethics of true crime and about the experiences that we actually go through. And I want people to know that this is the worst day of someone's life that is being thrown out there into the media. And how do we do it responsibly? I know when a case is being covered in the headlines and it's an ongoing case, you may not be able to talk to the family members because they're under certain gag orders for that case. But how do we cover those cases more ethically? And also podcasting, I believe this was said in a Vice article, Vanity Fair or Vice, one of the two, but podcasting was quoted as the wild, wild west. And there is no ethics. There's no like a code for podcasting. There's like, because with journalists, there's a code of ethics for journalists. There's nothing with podcasts. You could go on a podcast, you could spew out false information, and that happens with so many true crime cases, is that people on podcasts will go and say their opinion and say whatever they want. They also will go on Reddit forums, pull information off of Reddit forums, and quote that as information. And that is absolutely not true whatsoever. So I created a podcasting course. It was actually with Collier that I wanted to create the podcasting course, but I was the one that kind of just was like, okay, I'm doing this. You're just going to be here for the lives. And so I was fortunate for him to join me for the first round of lives, but now it's something because we've been on a journey with our relationship, and it's something that I needed to gain a little bit more independence in myself. And so I took it
Good for
over
you.
and I'm doing it all myself and I don't do it all myself. I put together it all myself. However, I have so many great people that join me with their opinions. For instance, you are joining me for a panel for media for survivors or media for survivors and co-victims. And I'm excited to have you. And that panel is actually free for anyone that wants to join, because I also know that a lot of survivors, and especially given the economy that we're in right now, a lot of people are not at the financial state that they were, say, a year ago. And so I want everyone to kind of have resources available, like the podcasting course. If you want to do it, there's exclusive videos. I literally teach you how to start a podcast and or revamp it or do whatever you need to do for your podcast. I teach you about how to interview victims, how to book victims, even how to edit, how to market your podcast, how to monetize from it in different ways that aren't the traditional ways for monetizing, but also like creative ways for monetizing, like hitting up your friends and families that you know that own businesses and asking if you could do an ad on your podcast for them, and also marketing off of that way, because the best way to grow and to make money is to connect with the peers around you and really ask them for their help to push it out, to share the word, because friends should help friends. And even if it's doing a 5-star review, that's so helpful. Or being like, hey, can you share this with your friend? You don't have to pay your friends ads for their podcast, but if you can, and you're in that financial place and okay, this person has a podcast and I know there's going to be people around the area that listen. This is actually going to help my business in some way, because there's always going to be ears or like eyes on it, because I think it's in marketing or something. You have to see it 3 times or something like that to really like get through to your head.
It's used to be 7. I think it's like 50 now. Because we're so overstimulated. But yeah, you're right. The concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So like teaching them all the good things about that, and supplying them with other experts where I'm not an expert in sound, but I know a ton of people that are the best of the best. So I have them on to ask them questions. And I think for ethical true crime, there's a different response that everybody has for ethical true crime, given their experience with the subject matter. And so I think it's important to hear what everyone else has to say, what they think true crime is, and then create your own set of guidelines to go off of that are more ethically inclined. Like, I'm not telling you this is what you need to do to be ethical. I'm saying, hey, I'm giving you all these opinions, and then you're going to take your opinion and do what you think is ethical at the end of the day, and listen to all these survivors and their opinions.
Which I think is the key core, is letting people kind of own their story. If I had to
Thanks.
sum that up, and like, is that right? Like, is that a fair assessment to make?
Yeah. And, I get that I'm not the only true crime story out there. I'm not the only survivor out there. And so my opinion will be helpful for someone who's like me. But for instance, I like it when people are like, oh, I'm sorry or invalidate me in that way. Where I know another survivor where if you tell her sorry, she's like, can you fuck off now?
So yeah, it's like each individual person has their own story and way of managing it
Yeah.
and handling it. And that's the thing with like any kind of trauma or triggers or whatever, is like it's going to vary by person. We're all wired differently. We all have, you know, some people may not enjoy the zombie figure, right? Like that might be a triggering event for someone else in a, you know, in a situation. And so you just gotta, I think, be respectful of people. And this is the approach I take with reality TV. When I have someone who is cast, I tell them, we don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. Tell me what's off the table. If we start talking about something and you don't want to continue, I will cut that out and we will just drop it. You know, or if you want to talk ahead of time, or you don't want to, I don't obviously make people record a podcast unless they come to me. I never ask, I shouldn't say never. I very rarely ask someone to come on my show from reality TV. Usually they ask.
Okay.
Or if they're being outspoken on their own, I'll reach out and ask if they're interested. But I think you just gotta, you know, we should be in control of our own stories, and that is whether you are a public figure or not. You have to control, you know, not even control, but like be an active part of your story, especially when there's content for money being made.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think it's also interesting too, like when people get books and they have them come out, I think that's also like a good time to be like, oh, let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like I have Now Accepting Roses, which I know this girl Amanda Stanton, and she was on The Bachelor. And she wrote that book, and then inside that book it like gives like a little bit about, you know, the hotel situation, some exclusives about like being beyond The Bachelor, and then you're like hearing some of this stuff and you're like, this is kind of horrible.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
That was my wake up call. Was like I was going through my like worst time of my life where I was just like, I can't. I in the course of like, what was it, 3, 4, maybe 8 weeks, I had been served divorce papers. I had been completely smeared and like defamed, and then I lost my job partially because of it. And it was just like, just boom, 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 hit. And I was just sitting there and I was like, man, and I did an interview with a psychologist, Dr. Isabel. And I was like, I went from the whole beginning to the end. It was several hours. And she's on the board and a co-founder of UCAN. Yeah. So I just was like, this whole thing was so fucked up. I'm like, from the moment that I was reached out to and how I was just sold according to what I wanted to buy about the whole process. And so it's just very distance helped me understand how fucked up it was and how somebody should probably do something to fight back against this, because I'm really, really strong and I know that I can handle it. But there's a lot of people that should never be in that situation, that get put in that situation. And it's devastating to have that happen to people.
Yeah. Like I know that I don't know who has been better about this and stuff, but I know before certain shows have been completely ridiculed for the mental checks, like the psychology eval. Yes, the psych evals, and then they have on people that are completely like unhinged and just, you know, utterly bonkers.
Those were, I had a producer from The Bachelor and several other shows on my podcast last year, and he was telling me, he's like, there's like it's like Bachelor crazy. It's like just the right scoring where they can like push them to get the drama out of them, but like they probably won't have a complete psychotic breakdown. And that was like their sweet spot. And, I think too, like you sign away your rights to your psychological exam on Love is Blind, or at least you used to. I don't know if that's still the case, but you can't even get it. So like, I have no idea what the results were. We tried to have a whole bunch of cast members reach out and get them, and they said, no, you signed them away.
Not even for yourself?
Not even for yourself.
You can't be like, am I crazy?
Yeah. Am I the crazy one here? But yeah, it's stuff like that I think is very, it's very on purpose. It's done on purpose. And I think that just overall, you're not like an active participant in your life or your story.
Yeah.
And at the core, like that's not acceptable, especially when it's being used to entertain people.
Yeah, 100%. I even talked to someone, Jackson Mickey. He was friends with my friend McCall, and my friend McCall was like, you should have him on your podcast, Terra. And I had him on, and he talked about his experience on Big Brother. And that was interesting too, because like they feed them the slop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not very ethical to even feed them slop.
There's so many unethical things that happen on all. There's the thing, it's all of these shows because none of them are regulated. None of them have to follow labor law because they classify people as contractors. Then they threaten you with NDAs. It's just completely, talk about the wild, wild west. It's like the same. There's no code of ethics. There's no ethics in like psychologist code of ethics or counselor's code of ethics that prohibits them or gives them guidelines for working on reality TV, for doing psych evaluations for reality TV or documentaries or whatever, docuseries, none of that. So I think there's just a huge miss that we've had in this huge gap in society where people who are being exploited for their story to entertain others are just completely eliminated or removed or invalidated in that process.
Yeah. And at least this guy won. And so he got a bunch of money. But he was like, this experience itself was not great, and you're locked in this house. And then he also, I feel like whenever there is a relationship, people choose sides.
Yeah, 100%. Can confirm that to be true.
Like even with my own and like with like going through the breakup and stuff, people just like, a lot of people actually took my side, but then, you have that love for the person and you're like, wait, please don't no one take a side. No one needs to take a side.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I remember feeling that way too, because, on Reddit, our good friend Reddit, some guy saw me at brunch with my friend who was here visiting from England, who I hadn't seen in like 5-6 years, and with my friends, and started this rumor that I was there with my girlfriend, and that's why I must have cheated, and that's why my marriage ended. And it was like wildfire, the messages I started getting, and then other people started believing it, we'll just say, and posting about it, and then before I know it, I'm like getting these nasty comments, being called a cheater, my friends being called a home wrecker. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And people started taking sides then, and it was just like crazy. And I don't think the public should take sides, but I also think like taking sides at the end of a relationship may make someone feel better in the moment and validated in the moment, but ultimately it doesn't help anybody.
No. And then when you're going through that breakup, just everybody's worst quality comes out during that point.
Yeah.
And when it's publicized, you're just, everyone has critiques.
Yes. And most people that break up or get divorced, they do it in the privacy of their own life. Mm-hmm. But when you're any kind of public figure, it can ignite like wildfire and just.
Yeah. I'm like, what if you get back together with that person?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of lived a little bit of that too, but
really?
Yeah, it's just, it's brutal and it's public. It's not necessary. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.